I want to talk about the parts of the computer today. So behind me I have a computer that is a desktop computer that I've put out on a board. That way we can better see the parts. Now most computers will have many of the same parts, but they'll look a little bit different, and we'll look at a few of those today. Now I do have my power supply. Obviously computers need electricity in order to run. The power supply in computers will either be a battery, or it can be like this one, which it will change it from an alternating current to a direct current. Now, you can see it goes everywhere. One of the most important parts of the computer is this green square right here. This is the motherboard. Now, a motherboard might look different in different computers depending on the shape, but the motherboard is the heart of the computer. It is essential because it connects everything. Everything will connect to the motherboard. In fact, if we had this plugged in, we would see that the monitor and the keyboard and the mouse and speakers would all connect to the motherboard as well. Now, occasionally a motherboard may not directly connect to the monitor, but this one does. One thing we can't see on this one, but it is here underneath this heat sink, is a processor. I do have a processor here. This is the brain of the computer. So the motherboard is the heart, the CPU is the brain. This is what does the calculations or the thinking. Alright, it is a semiconductor. Usually we make our semiconductors made out of silicon, and it allows it to hold information and manipulate it and change it. Now, another thing that a computer needs is RAM, random access memory. On this board, they're right here. This is what they look like. This holds the information that the computer is using at the moment. What is displaying on the screen, different things like that, is on the RAM. Okay, random access memory, what it's using at the moment. All of this is on the motherboard. Now, other things might be, and these are the parts that are essential. You must have a power supply, a power source. You must have a processor, you must have RAM, must have a motherboard. Now other parts are going to become a little bit less essential, but still important. Next we're going to move to a hard drive. Okay, the inside of the hard drive looks like this. It is a disk. The long name is a hard disk drive, but we usually call it a hard drive for short. The hard drive stores information while the computer is off. Now you might be asking or saying to yourself, Mr. Wood, that seems pretty essential. Well, yes, it is to hold information while the computer is off. That said, there's other ways around it. Now, older computers might have used a floppy disk. Now, floppy disks aren't used anymore. If you look inside, the disk inside of it is soft, thus it's called a floppy disk. And what ran it was a floppy disk drive. Modern computers still don't have then most computers had hard drives. Now modern computers don't use hard drives. They use something that's similar to flash memory to store information while the computer is off. So hard drives a lot of times are on their way out. Now I mentioned that all computers will have this. Well, what about the Chromebooks? Right here, this is essentially a Chromebook. If you look here, this board is the motherboard. I've disconnected the power supply. That was a battery. But right here where my finger is touching, that is our CPU. We have our RAM around it. Integrated on here, we also have our solid state drive. And we can add additional solid state drive in the form of USB drives or SD cards. As far as a phone, this is a Samsung right here. And you can see that it has the motherboard, it has our CPU and our RAM, it had a battery for the power supply, and it uses solid state drive as well. And so we're seeing that we have the same parts over and over and over again. Now occasionally you might get some extra parts that not all computers have. For example, this is a dedicated video card. It's the output to go to a monitor. Not necessarily all computers will have a video card like that. In fact, not all computers will output video. Another part we have, this is an optical drive. An optical drive plays a CD, as you can see. And what an optical drive does is, if you look at it, we do have a little laser on there. And the laser bounces a light off the CD, and it can detect whether there's pits there, and it can read that. So these are the parts of the computer. Hopefully you know a little bit more about it. These parts we call hardware. Hardware is the parts of the computer that you can touch, and since I can touch all of these, we have a hardware.